One foggy night, I was in the cemetery standing amongst the headstones. There was an eerie feeling in the air, with the light fog and the soft glow from the streetlights. The moon was full, adding to the eeriness of the night. Walking through the cemetery, the feeling was getting stronger, especially with the sphagnum moss hanging from the trees. In the dim light, the moss almost looked like ghosts floating in the trees. I made my way to the entrance and slowly opened the old gate. The rusty hinges made a creaking sound as they strained to the movement of the gate opening. I turned towards town. It almost felt like I was floating on air. The fog was slowly getting thicker. It was past midnight as I slowly walked down the street with houses on either side. I could see the glow from lights burning through the windows of a few houses. People must still be up, or they left a light on all night. A dog barked a "Who is there?" bark. I just kept on going. Once I was past that house, the dog stopped barking. The full moon was slowly disappearing into the fog. Not far away, another dog started howling at what was left of the moon. In the distance, another dog answered the howl, adding even more to the eeriness of the night. As I kept walking, the fog was slowly getting thicker. As I passed the old school building on my right, the fog was so thick that I could not see the building. I could hear kids laughing and playing in the schoolyard. I remembered when I was a kid playing tag with the other kids in class. We would also see who could go the highest on the swing. As the boys played baseball, the girls would play hopscotch or jump rope. Oh, what fun times we had as kids. When I first started going to school, there were not very many students, so they combined 2 grades into each classroom. My grandparents told me stories of when they went there to school. All the kids were in one room. By the time I got to high school, they built a new school due to the increase of kids in town. The old building is now used as the senior center. While in the 4th grade is when I met the new girl Judy. Her family had just moved to our town. I had a crush on her all through school. Suddenly I was across the street and the church was on my left. As I walked by, I could hear the organ being played inside and people singing. We would go here every Sunday. The minister who was preaching there when I was little scared me with his fire and brimstone sermons. According to him, we were all going to go to hell to pay for our sins. The next preacher we got would get long-winded, as my dad would say. People would fall asleep during his sermons. I did once, and Mom gave me a pinch, so I never did that again. My mom told me all about how she and my dad were married inside. She even showed me pictures. There was a picture of them from their wedding hanging on the wall in our living room. I have been to several weddings and a few funerals inside. I would rather go to a wedding instead of a funeral. At a wedding, everyone is happy and having a good time. At funerals, everyone is sad. When I got to the corner of Main Street and First Street, I started to turn up Main Street towards the center of town. In the middle of the intersection was a large old pine tree. The road went around the tree. Some people called it a roundabout. It was like a small park with a sidewalk surrounding the tree. There were a few benches to sit on. Kids would climb the tree and dare each other to go higher up. After more than one kid fell out of the tree, they put a fence around it. It was supposed to keep the kids from climbing the tree, but it did not. I could hear an organ grinder grinding away and the sounds of a monkey. Giuseppe used to stand in the shade of the tree during the summer with his monkey Miko. Sometimes Giuseppe would sing a song in Italian. Miko would dance to the music, then take off his hat and hold it out so people could put their change in it. The tourists thought this was funny and would put their coins in his hat. Giuseppe also had an ice cream cart. He had trained Miko to take the people's money. As kids, we would go up to Miko and he would hold out his hand so we could shake it. At Christmas time, the whole town would turn out and decorate the tree, making it look like a huge Christmas tree. People would take old shipping crates and paint them to look like presents, and stack them under the tree. Santa would show up, and all us kids would sit on his lap telling him what we wanted for Christmas. I slowly worked my way down the street. It was hard to see anything now that the fog has gotten even thicker. But that was all right. I knew where I was and what business was next from memory. Ah, this is O'Malley's pub. I could hear the clinking of glasses and the uproarious drunken chatter of the patrons, the sound of cue balls striking each other, a song everyone knew coming from the jukebox, and several people drunkenly trying to sing along but out of tune. But nobody cared, for they were having a good time. The stale smell of cigarette smoke and beer lingered in the air, the occasional squeal of a woman who probably just got her behind pinched. Next was the hardware store with its distinctive smells of fresh-cut lumber and the sacks of manure. You could buy just about anything here. There were bins full of nails of many different sizes. There were stacks of little drawers full of bolts, nuts, washers, and screws of many sizes and shapes. There were also all kinds of tools hanging on racks. I had no idea what most of these tools were used for, but it was fun looking at them. They even sold guns and fishing gear, along with other sporting and camping gear. This was a fun store to explore with my dad. I was now across the street heading back towards the roundabout. I was in front of the department store with its big glass display window. They would decorate it at each holiday or for the season. Christmas was Santa and his village. Easter had an Easter bunny. For 4th of July, it was all red, white, and blue with flags. During the summer, it looked like a day at the beach. They piled sand up and had a beach umbrella. The family of mannequins were dressed in swimsuits. The big picture in the background was of a beach in Hawaii. Whenever they changed the display, they would pull a curtain in front of the window so nobody could see. They would make a big deal when they opened the curtain. There was always a big crowd on the sidewalk, waiting for the big reveal. Some people would even be standing in the street. Mom would take us here to buy our school clothes. There were lots of other things to buy here besides clothes. They sold furniture, pots and pans, all kinds of household items that you did not know you needed. Dad even bought our TV set here. I was passing by Joe's meat market. I could tell just from the smell. Joe once told me it was not the meat you were smelling, but the blood. He said he could tell just by the smell what animal the meat had come from. He sold a variety of different meats. He always had beef, pork, and chicken. Sometimes he would have lamb, venison, or rabbit. He would have turkeys for sale at Thanksgiving. Mom would order the biggest one she could get, for there was always a big crowd at our house. Next was the market. It was on the corner. The grocer would put fresh fruits and vegetables in bins on the sidewalk. When you walked by, you could smell the sweet fruits and vegetables. Mom would come here once a week to buy her groceries. Sometimes, if she was cooking something and needed an ingredient that she did not have, she would give me some money and tell me to go to the market and to hurry home with no dawdling. I got my first job here. I would restock the shelves. I learned how to make a pyramid out of cans, making sure all the labels faced out so the customers could see them. I would also deliver groceries on my bike. I would place the bags in my basket. Sometimes a person or two would give me a tip for delivering their groceries. During the summer, all the kids in town would go around and look in the trash cans to find soda bottles that the tourist had thrown away. We would then take them to the market and turn them in for money. We would either buy a cold soda or candy with the money. Sometimes you would have enough to buy both. Next door to the market was the candy store with homemade fudge and other goodies. Penny candies of all kinds. Homemade taffy of many different flavors. During tourist season, it was hard to get inside. We would join the crowd outside and watch them make candy through the big glass window. It was fun watching them using the taffy puller as it spun and pulled the taffy, mixing it. They would add just the right amount of flavoring and food coloring to get the flavor and color they wanted. When Mr. Smith was trying out a new flavor, he would give us some free pieces to taste for him. They would pour the homemade fudge into trays to harden. Besides the usual 8 flavors, they always had the special flavor of the week. They also made a special holiday one for whatever the holiday was. I used to save my change so I could buy some of the mint fudge. It was my favorite. In the back of the store was an ice cream counter where we would buy sundaes. This is the first place I took Judy on an unofficial date. In high school, Judy got a job here. I was her #1 customer. She would put extra toppings on my sundae and not charge me for them. Continuing down the street, I ended up in front of the bakery. It always smelled of fresh baked breads, cookies, and cakes. Mom always bought her bread here. For special occasions, she would buy a special dessert. One time while I was waiting for my mom, I was watching the baker decorate a cake. He told me to hold out my hand, and he made a flower of icing in the palm of my hand. It was delicious. If my siblings and I were good, she would let us pick out a treat to eat. I liked getting the chocolate cookies. Across the street was the movie theater. I spent many Saturday afternoons there. Dad gave me enough money so my younger brother and sister and I could each get a large popcorn and a soda. We would watch cartoons before the main show would start. Sometimes they had special drawings, and if the number they pulled matched the one on your ticket stub, you won the prize. Most times it was a free ticket to next Saturday's movie. My little sister won once. When I got older, I would take Judy to see a movie either on a Friday or Saturday night. Once during a romantic scene, she bent over and gave me a kiss. I think it was love forever after that. Next door to the theater was the toy store. This store was every kid's dream. In the big window was a train set with the trains running in an oval. They had all kinds of dolls and even a baseball bat, glove, and ball on display. They would park a red wagon with stuffed animals in it on the sidewalk in front and a matching red 2-wheel bike. How I dreamed of getting that bike for my 12th birthday. I did not get it. I got a blue one instead. It had a bell and basket on it. I was the happiest kid in town. Inside they had just about any game you could want. They also had an entire aisle of just models of cars, airplanes, and boats you could build. I was back across the street again, passing the burger barn. It was a barn-shaped building that sold the best burgers in the entire state, if not the country. There was a framed newspaper article stating that this was where you can get the best burgers in the state. Some reporters traveled all over the state tasting hamburgers and chose our burger barn as the #1 in the whole state. I wish I had that job, for hamburgers are my most favorite food to eat. You could drive up in your car and stay in it while a car hop would come up and take your order. They would then bring your food on a tray that attached to your car door. When you were done eating, all you had to do was honk your horn, and the car hop would come and take away the tray. I then came to the last business in town, the gas station. It was on the main road just as you were entering the town. You could smell the scent of gasoline and greasy oil. If you smelled just right, you could also smell fresh new tires. We used to ride our bikes over the air hose that rang a bell when a car drove over it, trying to get it to ring. When a car pulled up to the pumps and the bell would ring, then an attendant would come out and fill your car with gas. He would also clean your windshield, check your oil and tire pressures. I came to the low wall that as kids we would walk along the top of. I floated up onto the wall and started walking along the top of the wall. I held my arms out to help keep my balance. I don't know why I did it, but I suddenly did a perfect cartwheel. When I landed, I was no longer on the wall, but on the parapet of the bank building 4 stories up. The bank building was the tallest building in town and was right in the middle of downtown. I remember going inside as a kid with my mom or dad. The inside was massive. The ceiling was 2 stories tall. As I got older, it did not seem as big anymore. The tellers were behind a counter with bars on it to keep people from grabbing the money that they had in a drawer. To me, it looked like they were in jail. Behind the tellers was the big door to the safe. I always thought, wouldn't it be neat to go in there and see all the stacks of money and gold stored in it? When I got to the end of the parapet, I just kept walking right into the air. I slowly floated down as I kept walking forward. When I touched down onto the ground, I was walking down the middle of the road. I was nearing the edge of town. I was heading for Henderson's bridge. It was a one-lane bridge, and cars had to wait for cars to stop on the other side before you could drive across. There was a great swimming hole just below the bridge. All the kids would jump off the bridge into the swimming hole. Judy and I would hold hands as we jumped off together. Cars would have to drive across slowly because of all the kids waiting to jump off. The fog was starting to slowly lift. Just ahead, I saw lights coming towards me then. Suddenly a big truck came barreling across the bridge. It was too late for me to get out of the way. Suddenly I bolted up in bed all sweaty. A nice dream turned into a nightmare. Looking next to me, my beautiful wife Judy was sound asleep.